Thank you, Robert. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. Thanks to the organizers who put this event and this panel together with these notorious speakers. I am more than honored to moderate the upcoming discussion. I salute and congratulate the organizers for selecting such a diverse group of women. Those of us who are in the IT sector know what I'm talking about. We're not used to necessarily having people from different backgrounds. Okay, my name is Oana Sipos. Quickly to introduce myself, and I'm a co-founder of Women in Tech Cluj and a recent mother of a toddler. First of all, I would like to mention that we welcome our audience's questions throughout the whole panel discussion. So, and I'll make sure to address them to our panelists today. To explore the benefits and the threats that the 21st century has brought to women's workplace, but also to be constructive. We want to see what can we improve, what can we do in order to make it a better place in the upcoming future, especially during these crazy times, if I may say so. So we'll first look at the current state of the workplace and how century, it sounds like so far away maybe. And then we're going to zoom on Romania and women and what can they do, both from the skills point of view, but also what can the government do for them. But before we dive in, let me briefly introduce the panelists today. We have with us Mrs. Ioana Bican, who is a professor and director of the Modern Literary Philology Research Center at the Babeș-Bolyai University in Cluj. Mrs. Ioana Neagoe, Professor and Director Research Center for Functional Genomics in University of Medicine and Pharmacy in Cluj-Napoca. Ms. Cristina Juk, the Executive Director of Spherik Accelerator. Mrs. Isabela Buhai, Regional Manager of Endava, and Mrs. Alina Negru, the General Manager at Emerson. So very big names. I am humbled to be here with all of you, given all of your titles and responsibilities. So this is not something I'm going to do, throughout the whole panel. I will avoid to ask questions to all 5 of you. But the first one, I need to do so because given your titles and all that you've achieved today, I do confess I have read your CVs as a preparation for this panel. So, yes, because I'm also a professional at the beginning of my career. If you had, or if you still have maybe, a career plan, were you planning to be where you are today, back when you started? And Mrs. Ioana Bican, if you want to start, maybe?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, which puts me into the right perspective, because I started working in 1986 when I graduated from the university here in Cluj. And the times were so different that I used to speak about that period of my youth as a young teacher. I speak of it as of another life, my first working life, which lasted until October 1990, when I became an assistant at the university, so I could come back at a university. And from there on, I learned how to plan a career, because before that moment, the decisions were not so much at us. They were officially imposed decisions about our careers and the steps we could take and the steps we should take. There were, you must think of that period as of a maze. So you're going to reach some destinations, but every moment you can meet an obstacle, a difficulty, an official interdiction like the one which was discreetly inscribed on my diploma when I graduated. It was the number of a decision of the communist government, just like this, an acronym. But it meant that I was among those who were not allowed to present themselves at to apply for jobs in research and universities. Okay, I will not go further with that. So in 1990, what I knew was that I wanted to build a career like any younger university assistant researcher of my generation from the West. So I started looking and asking questions very attentively to the first professors from the West who came at the Babeș-Bolyai University to teach us and to explain us how a university in the free world works. Actually, in 94, 95, I went abroad for the first time in my life. I had the right to have a passport, and I got a scholarship for my PhD in Switzerland at the University of Zurich. It was a wonderful year for me, but not only for my PhD, for everything I learned. I went and assisted to the public conferences, the public lectures, which were given in the frame of job competitions. I learned how things are done. It's like learning a new word. And
sorry to.
And so that was the way. I can't say I had a very regular, well-established, pre-established plan. I must be, I don't know, finish my PhD by that year and so on and so forth. It was rather, my plan was to pass through all the main points of an academic career, European style. And I succeeded doing this, and this is what I'm still doing. I want to be a professor encouraging young researchers around me and teaching them and forming them. This is what professors do in my book.
Thank you so much. I'd like to continue with Miss Alina Negru, if you could share with us.
Sure. So graduating chemical engineering and enrolling myself into a master's program in the same field, I was dreaming to become a researcher that would eventually discover the cure for tough disease such as cancer. But life had different plans with me. So if early in my career I was still playing with the chemicals and so on, later on life brought me into management roles. And I'm really enjoying it. Sometimes I do miss the lab part, playing with the chemicals, but nevertheless, I'm really happy with what I'm doing. I have to admit that when I joined Emerson, I didn't have a career plan. I was just doing the best I could in all the roles I had. I was really enjoying myself being in a team leader role, doing some engineering, preparing proposals, going to customers. I also really enjoyed my global customer care role when I had the opportunity to travel. Although it was tough, my son was starting school. He needed his mom. I was off for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, so I missed some steps in his life. In parallel, I was doing an MBA, but I couldn't say it was something planned that I will be a general manager for Emerson in Cluj by when I'm 40 or something like that. So I really accepted all the challenges life brought me. I got the best of it. I was trying to demonstrate my employers that they made the right choice.
Thank you. That's inspiring. So you don't always need to have a plan. I mean,
Yeah.
As you said, do your best can also be a plan. Do your best wherever you are. Thank you so much. For people of my age who are still looking for, okay, what's the right place or position for me to be in, I can empathize a lot with that. Professor Ioana Neagoe, how was it for you? Did you have a career plan?
I think that when we think to women at my age that pass through different events, starting with the communism, then immediately after 1990, with something that was not very different from communism. I think that we cannot say we had a plan. And in many cases, we were, like a leaf on the water. So we tried, we struggled to do the best we could. But unfortunately, I just read an article where it's written that in Romania, you can do less than 40% that you could do in another country. Yeah. And this is really sad. I try always, doesn't matter how many black bullets I get, to stay away and not to become depressive. So try to say, okay, we have to go further and we have to do much more. This is why I think that the major goal in my life, not in my career, in my professional life, was not to have a plan for my career, but it's to help people, young people, to have a plan for their career. Because what is happening now, it's so much different from what we were educated. And I think that the most important thing for a professor or a mentor is not only to find people that stay around him or her, not only to have people that encourage your ideas or agree your ideas, but I think it's very important to have people that have the capacity to express their thoughts, to say what they like and what they don't like. Usually professors doesn't agree a lot to have a different opinion from the young people. But I think that this is a mistake. I was very lucky during my early career as a scientist to have the opportunity to work in a lab that I never knew about till the moment I left Romania in 1993 with the Tempus Fellowship. And I arrived in Belgium in a lab of a professor I never heard about. And everybody around me was really astonished. How, you don't know who he is? No. And I was really ashamed because, well, at that moment it was not internet and it was quite a little difficult to know everything about all the people around Europe. But I just found that I was so lucky to be in the lab of a Nobel Prize winner. Wow. He was not a Nobel, he was in the team of Professor de Duve. This actually changed everything I wanted to do, started with that moment. Yes, because I said, well, I had this chance not only to meet this professor, but to see how he's organizing his work in science, how he's doing research, how he takes time to speak gentle and calm with everybody in the lab, because he had people from China, from Germany, from Italy, from almost everywhere. And never ever he said a bad word or something wrong to these young people. He just had patience, and whatever we destroyed in the lab, he said, okay, maybe you have to try this again. And I remember that it was the beginning of the Mac computers, and we had for the analysis in the lab a very old Mac, a big one like that. And when you have done something wrong, he said, please try again. The second time, he said, try again. And the third time, if you have done the same mistake, he had a smiley face, you are stupid. So I think that says a lot about the way we have to educate the young generation. And as Professor Bican said, I avoid to tell stories to the young people about communism because they don't understand. And I think it's correct. They cannot understand. I have two daughters which never knew anything about communism, and they are looking at me, wow, it's really like that. Okay, so coming back to what a career means, I think that being a model, but being a model, I think doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. We are human beings. We are doing mistakes. We are doing things that maybe are based on something that is not very objective. It's a little bit subjective. There are people that we like, that are people that we don't like. What I learned in United States as a Fulbright fellow is the fact that whatever you like or you don't like people, when you are doing science, when you are a researcher, you have to, and I would like to write it with big letters, to collaborate with everybody. The tendency in Romania, even today, is to destroy all the people that are doing something good. Why? Because you don't like them. You don't like people that are doing something. You don't like people that are building something. And I hope that during the next 10 generation, based more and more on the IT people, we will be able to put this Romanian phenotype away and to be able to collaborate. Each time when I speak with people that are doing the same job that I'm doing in Bucharest or in Iași or in Timișoara, they said, oh, we have many collaboration in US, in France, in Japan, but in Romania, oh no, we don't collaborate with Romania. That's strange because this is the easiest thing. We speak the same language. The distance is, it's not anymore the case, but the distances are short. So it's much easier to put common effort and to collaborate with people in Romania than to start looking for collaboration outside. And the most...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think we should totally do another panel just on this topic. I was talking to my dad about this issue right last weekend, with whom I don't have necessarily the strongest of relationships. So I totally agree with you. We should we should be making an analysis about this. But if you don't mind, I'd like to keep it to the point. If we don't make a panel, I'll surely write you to get out and get a coffee, hopefully after Corona times are gone, and talk about this because it's an issue that it's also bothering me. Miss Isabela, if you can tell us your part of story.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for the invite. Well, if I look back at my career, I started, when I was in high school, I was very much into mathematics. So when I came to university, I said, okay, I'm going to go to computer science because I thought mathematics will play into that. So I've done computer science for 5 years back then, and then a master in business administration. And then I got a job as a programmer. I was a Java developer at the beginning of my career, and I was also teaching one of the laboratories at the Technical University of Cluj-Napoca. So I think at one moment back then I said, okay, I need to kind of decide if I'm going to go with the private sector or if I'm going to stick and I don't know, just build a career at the university. And then at that moment in time, I took the decision to move on with the private sector. And I think my career was a bit of a mixture between working hard and also tapping into all the opportunities they came across. I always looked at kind of, I don't know, just becoming a better version of myself and just having, I think, a greater impact in whatever I am pursuing as a career. So I remember after I was a programmer for a few years, I thought, okay, I thought of myself of being able to influence more if I kind of try to build up my career in areas where I can just, I don't know, create a bigger impact. And I wanted to be a project manager, I believe, I know, a few years ago. And back then it was a bit difficult because I didn't have that on my resume, right? I was a programmer and it was fine, but just people weren't kind of calling me for an interview. So it was a lot about kind of learning, and I did know that if I am given the chance and opportunity, I would be able to prove myself. And I got that. And then after a few years, I joined Endava back in 2010. As a project manager, and I had the opportunity to work with some very senior people from whom I learned a lot. And I also, I think I had the chance just to, I don't know, be in the right company which value women. And I remember we had this opportunity to lead the department of project management, and it was like 1 week before I had to give birth to my first child. And I said, okay, regardless of that, I'm going to go for it because I don't know, I'm very ambitious and I was very optimistic, and I didn't think that that particular kind of pause in my career, looking after my child, which should, I don't know, influence my future plans. So I went for it and I got the job. It was an opening. Other people submitted an application. And then the company was, I don't know, kind enough to have somebody to fulfill that role as an intermediate until I came back. So, and then afterward, it was just, I don't know, many opportunities came and I went for them. But in general, I think I don't necessarily have like that career plan to just, I don't know, be number one, beat competition and all that, because I think it's a different world out there, right? So what I am looking is just to seek for those work opportunities which somehow contribute to something bigger. And I know it could be, I don't know, like it could seem a bit utopic, but I do look to, I don't know, to advance that greater good. So I have a very, I don't know, idealized version of the future where technology and the advances in technology, they just make our lives better and happier. We close some of the gaps we have in our society in terms of, I don't know, education, access to medicine, education, all the kind of disparities in our societies, a greener environment, more mature economies, and all that. So if I look at what I'm going to do in a few years from now, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to influence that vision of the future. So I'm going to just ensure that I get better every day, and I'm a better version of myself.
Thank you. So basically having a filter, as you did, like, okay, I want to have impact, is also a way to, it's also a good compass for, okay, what opportunity you should look after or take next. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Cristina, did you have a career plan?
Hello, everyone. I think I'm one of the first generations when the concept of a career plan was beginning to take shape in this area of the world. And I used to hear it a lot when I was in high school and then in my student years. And I always felt like an outsider, or like I don't fit because I couldn't imagine myself. Like, how do I make a plan? How can I choose for myself what do I want to be in 10 years? And yes, I've read a lot about like all the studies that say that people that actually have a career plan are more prone to achieving what they have put on that plan, as opposed to the people who just go with the flow. But somehow, for me personally, I realized a few years ago that it was always about learning. it's just something I'm curious about, and then I start learning and developing myself in that direction. For example, I studied architecture. I'm an architect. And then while I was finishing my studies and I started to sort of have an idea about how this area works and what is happening. And then I got curious about other things, and I started somehow entering the tech world. And it was always about this curiosity to learn things and to, like, I heard about a friend of mine. She just got a job as a product manager in January 2015. And we had a chat over tea about it. And it was the first time I heard the concept of a product manager. And I wanted to learn it. So then I got myself a job as a product manager, and I spent 2 years learning about it and all the concepts, the skills that come with it. And practically it's not very different from architecture. It's just you're talking about a tech product as opposed to a building or design, because what you have is like all the input information you get from the clients, from the users, and all the, the technical parts, or like in architecture case, the legislations and all the rules and all of that. And then you need to find a creative way to put those things together so that they make sense and they actually offer what the clients and the users are looking for. And then it's like just learning. Right now I took over the position of executive director for Spherik Accelerator, and my goal right now is to learn how to actually build and manage a healthy and happy team, and all the other skills that come alongside this. But it's about curiosity, I guess. I can't even begin to imagine what I will be curious about in 5 or 10 years. But I'm very eager to go there and to see myself.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful that you studied architecture, but you were able to translate your skills in the IT sector. And actually, sometimes they say it's better to be an outsider because your view is not affected, right? It's not so close-minded sometimes in that IT box, so to say. I want to assure you that I've read your questions and we're on top of them. I just want to pick up on one thing that our speakers mentioned. I'm talking about our 2 professors who were saying, okay, communism was an era that influenced. It's a better word to say so. I'll take a step back to mention that I remember when I was, let's say, in my 20s, and people were saying enough with so many movies on communism. If you remember, about 5-10 years ago, there were quite some movies on communism, and still are actually. And even though it seems as it's on the table, we're actually not talking enough about it, and we're not talking to the younger generations about it, because they say those who forget history are sometimes almost bound to repeat it, and we definitely don't want to go there. So I understood both from you, Professor Bican, but also from Professor Neagoe, that you went towards the West, and that definitely influenced, your ideas, your perspective, what you knew you could do, what could be done even. What other benefits did the 21st century brought to women's workplace? Because I think if we don't know, sometimes we need a shake to say, hey, you're one email away from anyone in this world if you want to be mentored, if you want to learn about an opportunity, which was not the case back in the 90s, for example. So can you please, your perspective on what came, what brought it?
Yes, I think connectivity was essential for us too, because you mentioned the opportunities, but when I was a young assistant and PhD student at the beginning of the 90s, where did I learn about opportunities? From the professors, from the boss, from top to bottom, if they wanted to share that information. And this is one of the first lessons I learned out of my own frustration, that this kind of informations in a university, because I was working and practically living in a university, this kind of information must circulate freely. So when I still remember that when I came back in 95 from Switzerland, I had friends at the Faculty of Mathematics in the Babeş-Bolyai University, but I went to them and said, I know there is something like an email, and when you're building it, I want it, because I've seen in Switzerland what they can do with it. So I was among the first 10 happy owners of an email box at the UBB, which died some 15 years later because the server died. But I remember a time when I was going, we were calling it the Red Building in Stefan Cel Place, in order to read my emails. And from then on, I could get to contact professors and specialists and colleagues from practically everywhere. My first international collaboration, which ended in a huge literary encyclopedia in 98, was also due to the fact that I was not only a specialist, probably a good one, in Romanian literature, but I had an email, so I could be contacted from the States. And the personal computers became part of our lives. We were so eager to know and to work a lot in order to make up for what we lost during the communist years, that again in 92 I wasn't traveling abroad already, but I asked a very good friend of mine who had a campus in Brussels to buy a personal computer for me, just the same he would buy for himself. He was a specialist in informatics. So this is how I got my first Mac Classic, which and the printer associated to it, which was a wonderful device for a professor of literature. It's a wonderful device in philology. So from there on, everything somehow came naturally, because I could, owning this and knowing how to use an email, and I don't know, getting a Gmail account at the beginning of 2005 by invitation only, I was like my colleagues in the Western University. I felt very free. I felt I had access to information, and I could develop a way of sending and sharing this information with my colleagues, with my students. This is what I'm doing even nowadays.
And I confirm you're very good at it, because you've been super fast at replying our emails, and I definitely appreciate that. Thank you. So remember, connectivity is something we should appreciate more. It's than a threat, let's say. Professor Neagoe, what do you think the 21st century brought?
I am coming back again and again to the same idea. So I apologize if it's too much. But as I come from the health field, coming from the University of Medicine and Pharmacy, we built here the so-called ASAIH, which is a Society for Entrepreneurship for Students. And actually, we were the first in Romania, maybe in the medical field, to build it. And I tried to put together a few tens of students in medicine and pharmacy to go for innovation, which is very, very hard. And I heard in Andrei Kelemen's session earlier that actually what we lack a lot, and I think that this is especially in the medical field, is the education of the young generation about entrepreneurship and innovation and so on. So even if we have all the tools, even if we have internet, we have access to thousands of millions or trillions of documents that are free, database, so everything. Maybe this is why we don't act as we had to, because everything it's here, and we are sure that with one click we can go in any direction. But I think that the thing that has to change in this century for the young generation is to educate the Romanian young people what innovation and entrepreneurship means, and pushing things like in each university, whatever the field of that university is, to have courses, seminars, to bring people that know what to do. Because in the medical field, what they know is that they can go in private practice. But this is not what we are looking for. This is how to put together our expertise with the people in Babeș-Bolyai, with the people in Polytechnica, with the people in, I don't know, other institution, in order to build something better for our patients. So I'm coming back to the idea that even if we have access to everything, and the COVID-19 helped us a lot, and I want to say that maybe the most important thing as a consequence, as a good consequence of the COVID, is the fact that all the Americans, they actually accept the invitation to the conferences because they are online. So they don't care about money, about coming in Europe and so on. And this is a privilege because we can bring online really big names from medicine, from life science field, from research, but also from innovation. And I think that this will be the major plus of this century, to be able to use these tools in order to create generation of innovative young people.
Thank you so much. That's already very nice. You're going on the track of okay, what can we do to get to make it even a better workplace, not only for women but for everyone. We'll pick it up also later.
I would like to make just a very short remark.
Please.
I don't want to enter in details, but for sure, at a certain level, women are maybe not well seen in very high position, because in many fields, it is still a world of men. But I think that we don't have to care about. And if you have the capacity to put this aside and to try to build what you are convinced that you know to do, I think is to bring men around you and to build together. So I think that this will be also in the next 100 years, because this comes from a very long history. We will not change anything in this century from this point of view. Like Black Lives Matter, nothing will change in US, even if there are some little things that are happening. But we have to keep in mind that if we want to do something, we have to do it, whatever it will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I took a note, and we will come back to it. I promise. It's a very, very good constructive point already. I'll move a bit to the chat. So Monica Hermănescu, I hope I'm not making a mistake. Hi, Monica. Nice to have you with us today. She's mentioning, I think it's necessary also a men manager to speak about women in the 21st century. I often say that women in tech need men at the table because some to say, hey, you're doing a great holding you. So that's a very good point, Monica. Thank you. And also, I think that was another question while Isabela was presenting. Did you feel that it's harder in Romania to be accepted as manager, even if you're a good and competent leader speaking both on women and men teams? Isabela, if you want to add, and maybe Alina, please offer your perspective afterwards as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question.
I think you're muted.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So I don't necessarily feel that it's harder to be accepted as a manager in Romania. I think, to be honest, in Romania, we're a bit fortunate because when we're talking about, I don't know, gender bias and everything else, definitely I think based on the geography where you're from, I think those things are more visible than in other areas. So I think, I don't know, Western Europe, although US, especially in technology, right? The kind of the disparities between men and women is much more visible. In Romania, if I look at it, for example, in my company, I think it kind of goes the same in kind of overall at the sector level. We have about, I don't know, 40-45% women, but definitely there's less women at the top of the funnel, right? So I haven't necessarily found that it's difficult. I think it all kind of relates to the personal leadership style that managers have, right? So I don't think nowadays we're living in a very dynamic world, right? So being a manager is not necessarily enough, or is not necessarily going to make a statement. It's about kind of what kind of leader you are. And I think as women leaders, we've evolved a lot in, I don't know, last few years. I think we all have some innate qualities which are our strengths, and we need to kind of continue to build on them. I think women are very good communicators. They have a high emotional intelligence. They're very kind naturally. But in the same time, I think we need to be very self-aware, and we need to acquire a set of qualities which will make us very good leaders rather than very good managers, right? So in my personal case, I think I learned a lot to be a much more active listener, to be fully present and truly listen to the opinions of other people, because naturally I'm very creative. I come with a lot of ideas, and I think people, they need to take that with a pinch of salt. And I had people in the past saying, Isabela, you're coming with this abundance of ideas, and sometimes it's hard for us just to implement those. So I think as managers and leaders, it's important to build trust. It's important because being a leader in the end is a very human job, right? So regardless of the sector, I think not being a good manager is what kind of gives you a seat at the table, but kind of being a very good leader who's able to, express himself very, very well. So yeah, I haven't found difficulties in being, let's say, with a group of men, expressing my thoughts clearly. I personally speak up when I have an opinion. I do share it, so I don't have any problems with that. So I had a good experience so far in Romania.
Thank you. That's very heartwarming to know. Alina?
Yes, so for those of you who followed my presentation this morning, I also talked about the diversity and inclusion programs that we have in Emerson. And similarly to Isabela, in Cluj, we are 50-50, percentage that you can also recognize in senior managers, including myself. Nevertheless, in Europe, though, in West Europe specifically, the situation is completely different. It's getting better from 9 years ago when I joined Emerson, but still there's a lot of room for improvement, especially in the western part of Europe. In Romania, maybe it's also a little bit of a heritage from communists. During the communist, males and females were working aside, while in Western Europe, women were doing something else than building up their careers. But personally, I couldn't say I felt it. Yes, there are unconscious biases. We all have those. And there were situations where I had to confront some of my colleagues and asking, why do you think that? Or what made you come with this opinion? But I was never afraid to step up, speak up, fight for my opinions with passion. And I wouldn't say that I was discriminated or the fact that I was the woman leader pulled me back in another.
That could open an opportunity for me actually to address the question to further on, because discrimination based on gender is something that sometimes we talk about at Women in Tech as well. And I was wondering, also preparing this panel, if you've ever felt discriminated based on either your sex or background, for example. Cristina?
Personally, I didn't feel it in my workplace. I don't know, maybe this tech world is a little more inclusive. As we know, in Romania, the situation is a little bit better than in general in Europe. But I did feel it in other contexts, like at events or some other workshops or classes. Like I was taking Ruby course that was like a long time ago, and I had some questions for the trainer, and his reply was, there's no need for me to answer your question because you won't understand it either way. And that was really hard for me, and it was the reason why I just gave up on the entire thing, because if you're in front of us and you're supposed to teach us something and we are here to learn, this kind of an attitude is not something that encourages people to learn and to stay curious and to pursue this path. So I didn't encounter in the workplace. I had always super nice colleagues, no matter where I worked, either back in the days, in my architecture days or in tech. But outside of that, it did happen. I'd like to say not very often, but it's not.
Thank you for sharing this. Yes, thank you for sharing that.
Oana, before we move on, can I answer George Lupascu's question? He had a question on the whether we felt throughout our career gender bias, not gender bias, but cultural bias.
Yes, and, please.
I would like to share an example from my career. I really felt it in several occasions, but the example I'm going to give you is in my earlies with Emerson, where I was working for Norway and with Norwegians, and us as very passionate Romanians, we shake hands, we hug each other, we kiss each other. And for me, it was shocking to spend 6 weeks amongst my colleagues, and they were just entering in the office in the morning without saying, hi, how are you today? And initially I thought it was us, but then one of my HR colleagues actually gave me a book. It's called Kiss, Bow, and Shake Hand, and it's about how to address different cultures. And I started to understand that it's not us, but it's actually the way that they behave. So I didn't took it personally anymore, but it really impacted me in my earlies. I was so passionate. I was trying to make an impact, change something, agree with them, and the only thing I could get from a meeting was whether that was good or bad, it was just So then I didn't know what to do, and most of the cases I just took the decision, implemented it, and waited to see whether I did good or wrong.
Okay, so the cultural bias was actually, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I felt it as well. Actually, I've been living 3 years in Belgium, and I used to say the same, that the cultural bias was stronger than the gender bias. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, just last, maybe Professor Bican, did you feel you were discriminated throughout the years?
Of course. But the university is probably a more conservative and traditional place than the ones most of you work in, especially in Southern Europe universities. I wouldn't generalize only for the Romanian ones. Since 2000, I'm working closely with Italian universities, so I'm always comparing, I keep comparing. In the universities, there are two cultures which overlap. The one is the Western Protestant modern culture, the meritocracy, the works. The other one is the traditional local gerontocratic culture, and which is more gender biased, for instance. And it can get very diffuse and discrete, and find this overlapping can become very refined because it happened for the last century. It's still happening. What I want to say is that rather often I got used to that, and I learned. I have a whole registry of possible answers to talk against it. But if one of my suggestions, ideas, etc., is not realized, or it's is not agreed by my colleagues or by my bosses, the explanation goes along the gender bias line. I mean, as a woman, you should probably do something else. In fact, that's the most permissive level. At that level, it's not outrageous to give such an excuse. Should they say, we don't like it, I don't like it because your idea goes against my projects, or I find it a bit of a competition, it would have been much more difficult, and it would be less agreed at a general level. So what I want to say in a nutshell is that in 30 years at the university, both here and abroad, I kind of refined my strategies of fighting this without getting very angry, without getting ultimative, I don't know. Okay, it's like this, and let's unmask the real reasons for such attitudes and go further on. Of course, it's also about educating. It's also about what I learned from my mentors, which were women. Incidentally, not at all. Probably I was looking for role models, and I was taught never to agree to do something I don't want to do. So it's as basic as that. It's traditional, conservative, and much simpler, I think.
Thank you. That's very wise pieces of wisdom of you, especially the one to educate and the one not to get too hot on the topic. Just hold your horses and bring it on the table. No need to put it under the doormat, as we say. Okay, I know, Cristina, we have another one to you with taking care of your child. Cristina, I know you have an answer with that.
I have a short comment here. Alina mentioned before about, all these unconscious biases, but that we are taking with us everywhere. And this question, I think it's one of the most great examples. I would I think it's also very important because children are important for our society, being that they will be the ones who will actually advance our societies in the future. So it's important to have a healthy system in place to help take care of the children and education and basically building a future from the early stages. And I would really like to see this kind of questions being addressed in men panels. Like, can you imagine asking a CEO, let's say, or a professor in a panel, how do you take care of your children? Who is helping you?
That's wonderful.
Does your company provide support in raising your children? Or how do you make it, how do you find the balance between raising the children and building a career? I mean, we assume, all of us, because it's something way in the back of our minds, that this is not a man's problem, because man has a wife, and then this is the problem for the wife or girlfriend. The mother is in charge, and she has to deal with it. She has to find solutions. And I think we should address these questions, but go beyond the fact of how do women find the equilibrium between work and household and like personal life, and treat it as a family and as an overall, big question. How do we think about these roles in a family, in a society? How do we actually move on from this old way of thinking and go into a more, let's say, healthy and supporting future?
That's a very strong point, and thank you for raising it. I'll make maybe a mean comment, but men want their name to be given to the kids, but then further on, it's very, it takes a lot of negotiation skills to have them on board and, be involved in the kids' life. I think it is getting better.
In Europe, and we are actually lucky to be where we are right now. I was reading recently that in Afghanistan, for example, women just received, well, it's not voted yet, but they might receive the right of having their names written on the children's birth certificates, which is mind-blowing because we think about, how to diminuate the pay gap and how to empower women more. But like there's countries and other places of the world where these things, they don't even dream about it because they are so far away behind us.
Exactly.
Behind.
Thank you so much. So let's change the question and ask, okay, how is it for you, for ladies, when you got kids? How did that work out with career, and how did family help you on that? And if I just want to make a small remark that we have half an hour, less than half an hour from now on. So if you could address it in 30 seconds or less than a minute, that would be very, I know it's very appreciated. I know it's a hard topic, and I'm fighting it myself because I recently became a mom, and it really kept me busy. So Isabela, if you want to start.
Yes, thank you. So as I've given the example, I think my company was very supportive of what I have two boys. I did go on maternity leaves, and the company was very supportive. I did stay in touch with the company. So my manager was kind of talking to me every once in a while, just to stay up to date. I have a very supportive family. My husband, he's working in IT as well. So he kind of really understands where I am at. Sometimes you need to go and travel for client meetings. Sometimes you might just have one of those days where you work until, I don't know, midnight. So we're trying to support each other. I'm also one of those lucky women with a mom who's moved in Cluj, and for a few years now, she's helping us greatly. But I think in general, I think as women, we're very adaptable. So if, I don't know, previously when I was a teenager or back in university, I couldn't imagine waking up at 5 o'clock with my first child. He wasn't sleeping through the night, and I came back to work after 8 months of maternity leave, and my child, he was waking up like 5 or 6 times a night. And I've done that, so I managed to go up like until 2 years of old. Then he kind of changed habits, but I managed to go through that with the support of my family. But I also realized that I adapted very quickly. And as a mom, I always kind of look at kind of really connecting with my kids and creating those relationships and that true connection. So sometimes when, I don't know, from a professional standpoint, things get hard, I try to kind of balance and invest as much time as possible with my family, my passions, my kids.
Thank you. That's very nice. You have all the support from all sides. Professor Neagoe, how was it for you once you got kids? I know you're super prolific in terms of patents and research. So this is, I've been humbled seeing your CV. So how can you be so, you have so many results and, still have the mom hat, let's say?
Well, it's not quite true, because everything that you saw in the CV was built after we built the research centers. So for a long decade, because we had nothing in the area, we started building this research center in the university and in the hospital. And it was during the time that my kids were very, very small, very young, and my husband is a surgeon. So it's quite difficult having such a profession to be able to be all together with the and as Isabela said, I learned very, very early that I can wake up each morning at 4:40 in order to be able to prepare everything for the kids, everything for my husband, because they needed different breakfast, the coffee needed to be hot, everything prepared for the hospital and so on, in order to be able to leave at 7 to the job, to go to job, to start working very early in the morning before everybody arrived in the lab. But I was very lucky with my mom and with my mother-in-law. So the two grandmothers really helped us a lot. Yes, and this is something that I didn't saw so much in Western world. There, once the children become adults, they leave home usually, and they have to try to build their private life and families without the support of the parents. Maybe this is good or this is bad, I don't know, but here in Romania, this culture, I think that helped thousands of women starting doing their career. So the grandparents have such an important role, at least in my career and in many careers of the professional that are working with me. Each time when we have a deadline or a conference or a paper to be sent to publishing or a patent, or I'm asking, can you ask the grandma to stay with your kids? Yes. Can you ask your grandpa to take the kids in the park and so on, just for 3 hours? Yes, we will discuss. So I think this is still very important here, but maybe in 20 years this will change, because I will try to just make a short comment to one of the questions, is there life after death? meaning that we are dead at 55. But yes, we have to stay in job up to 65 at least. So this means that we still have a lot of years to build our career. And I think that now it's the most, at least for me, now I started finally to do what I like. To choose my subjects for science, to choose the people I work, to try to be more than push people, to try to be their mentor, and to have the courage to recognize if I made mistakes. So everything changed after I achieved quite a certain standard in my career. So now I care less about what people are going to say about me. Which I think that it's quite a problem for many of us. So going back to what you said, I think that finally the family is the most important thing we have in our life, and it's the support from our family is the most important. What we achieve in our career, it's something apart. It's something that we want, we take profit or not, we are lucky or not, but family, we have to build a lot and to give all the passion and all our time as much as possible to our family.
Just one note to that, to what Miss Ioana said. So I think it's very important as women that we can express our vulnerabilities, and it's okay to say I had a tough night, and I think companies nowadays, if they're open and you want to be in that kind of company which understands your personal setup and situation, because I think if the leaders in that organization really are empathetic and they care for their people, they will understand the different setups that each of one of us kind of have at home. So it's okay to say that. It's okay to say, I can't make it for this meeting. I need to take my child to kindergarten. And it's okay to have that open communication and just, I don't know, speak up about it, because I think as women and as mothers especially, we have this kind of, I don't know, unlimited gift to give back and care for the others. I think it's in our kind of mother nature, right? So I think companies should seek to really support those women, and women should, and mothers should be able to fully express themselves and ask for support, be open about what they feel and what they experience. So.
Thank you for your comment. Alina, if you may.
Yes, I will be short. It was tough for us in the beginning. We didn't have any grandparents around us, so I couldn't have been here without my husband's support, especially during those long business trips beginning my journey with Emerson. He was there for me. He supported me when I decided to do the executive MBA. It was a conscious decision. I missed some of my son moments, but now he's 10, he understands, so we are really all three partnering and helping each other. It was great to hear that Isabela and Ioana had the grandparents supporting them. I wish I had that opportunity, but we had to do it ourselves.
And I'm afraid it will be more and more the case. That's my feeling as from the new generation. And I'm super happy for Professor Neagoe, and I know what you mean. My mother expressed the same, but I feel like the new generations is taking a bit of a different turn. Before our panel started, we were talking with Professor Bican. I have a kid and I feel like, life has different priorities now. And she was saying, well, get used to it. Do you want to add anything else, Professor Bican?
Well, I don't have kids. It's not a career plan. It just happened. And I have a very painful memories of moments when in the workplace, I was congratulated for that. Because it was a sign, traditional cultural bias. It was a sign for my colleagues that I was professionally oriented. And of course, I learned to give sincere and good replies to such situations, such comments. But well, this the attitude towards families and families having kids and being in the workplace is this attitude is for me very significant. Would it be in a corporation or in a university? I think it's a very, very good indicator of our level of civilization and post-modernity, if you want. So I don't mind at all when my colleagues, my younger colleagues, have difficulties adjusting their schedule, their professional schedule, because of the kids or because of the family. This being said, I have a very supportive family myself, and one can have a very supportive family and understanding partner even when one doesn't have kids. But the attitude towards families with kids, it's something that bothers me, and I'm trying to be attentive to my colleagues' needs.
Thank you so much. That's indeed, I think it's a topic we should talk more about, and I think as a whole, as a country, should put it much more in front. Back in the days when I became a mother, I was saying, if I ever start a company, I'll first hire only women, because they are just so, productive and effective, and I don't know, it felt that mothers can be on top of things and more mindful. But definitely, thank you for your comment. Before, Carmen Aruste, I saw your question about the professor. We're coming back to it now. We're running a bit late. We have... I would like to go in terms of scales or in terms of government policies. I did take notes, and I remember that Professor Neagoe mentioned bringing people together is something that women have the capacity and should focus on in order to make the workplace a better one. Then Isabela was mentioning that companies should support moms and be there for them, understand. And I think I would extend this to companies to support parents, especially also in this Corona times when it's just so, it's been a tough time also for dads, actually. Diversity is something that I remember Alina mentioned, and you said that Emerson is doing a very good job at having a diverse and a very inclusive community, which I think it's key for the future. Trust and connectivity. If there's one more thing you'd like to address, what would it be, Cristina? What skills should women have and develop?
I told you previously, I don't think there's a must or there's a specific plan that is good for everyone, even as myself not having a career plan. I don't think this is a fit for everyone, because there are people who really need to have a plan and to know what's next, what are the next steps and what should they do. What I would work on, well, I'm still working on myself, is self-confidence, a sense of curiosity. It doesn't matter what field you choose to study in or to pursue, to build your career in. If you're curious about what's happening, what news there are, what new research, and the world is changing constantly. So in order to be part of it and to still be relevant, you need to constantly learn, either it's in one domain or going cross domains. So I'd say curiosity is really important. And then self-confidence is a skill that we lack, many of us. And it's not about, being better than someone else. It's about trusting in yourself that you are good and the person next to you, they're also good. Because when you don't trust yourself, it's very easy to not trust anyone around you, because, I can't do it, so no one can do it, or...
Thank you. That's very true. I took notes. Perhaps we can have a wrap up later on. Does anybody else want to add anything on the skills list that women should and could develop for a better workplace?
I would like to emphasize what Professor Neagoe said. It's not necessarily about the skills or the competencies, but what really worked for me, and I would like to share with everyone, is to try fail, failings, and have the courage to step and try it. If you don't, you might be skipped. So that really helped. That would be a piece of advice I would give to the audience.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Last call.
I would like to add a bit to that. So
Isabela?
Yes. So I think women, as human beings, they're very authentic, and I think they should keep that level of authenticity, but also be very self-aware and understand what their kind of value is to their team, to their organization, to their family, and be able to kind of speak up and take the initiative and start playing on those values. And I think it's very important. One of the skills that I think women should build is the assertiveness, having, as I said, like a strong sense of themselves and their value, and acknowledging what they deserve to get, what they want, and really kind of trying to stand up for themselves, even in the most difficult situation, and try to get what they want.
Thank you so much. I took my notes. It's super important also for me. Thank you so much. One last topic, a small one. I came across an article that was an interview for a senior gender advisor to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ms. Nala Vali, and she said the following: "Our formal economy is only possible because it's subsidized by women's unpaid work," which is a strong statement, and I think it refers to all the maybe childcare, parents, elderly care, all the household work. What should the government do to support women more in the workplace? What could it do? Professor? I think we lost her a bit. Maybe, Alina, do you have an idea? I know it's maybe like a black mine, and we're not there, right? We're not in the government, but I think thinking about it, it's still an important thing.
Yeah. Indeed. So what would definitely help us, especially here in Romania, it's more nursery schools and kindergartens. If I'm to compare the support that we get in Romania with not having enough nursery schools and kindergartens compared to my colleagues in Netherlands, for example, that are on maternity leave for 12 weeks, but right after their kids already have a place in nursery school, paints a completely different picture. So I truly believe that is something that the government should invest in order to help women, and why not raise the birth rate?
Indeed. Cristina, please.
Yes. I do believe that I'm not a mother myself. I just know about the context. In Europe, France, Belgium, Germany, like a lot of the Western countries, the maternity leave is 3 to 4 months. And after that, you just go to work, and then there are companies who give a little bit extra, or like you can work part-time for a few months. In Romania, we have 4 months of maternity leave, and you can also choose to up to 2 years of what they call raising the child leave, which is also paid. And this is actually a reminiscence of the Soviet era, but it's also helping to some extent. I don't think we are this bad in Romania, but what I would see as a step forward is getting to talk more about how we involve the fathers in raising the child. Right now in Romania, I know that a father can get up to 1 month of maternity leave if they follow some Lamaze classes, or I don't know exactly what's the in other countries.
Indeed, they are encouraged to do so.
It varies from a few days to up to, I don't know, a month or so. In Italy, they recently raised this paternity leave a lot. And this is actually, we go beyond the discussion again about women as the sole responsible for a family, for a child, because a family, you also have a father, no matter if the parents live together or not. The father should also be involved and should also have responsibilities, and opening the discussion about it and actually improving and giving more opportunities for the fathers to get involved, it would also help the mothers.
Thank you. I want to make a correction or make sure I understood correctly. You mean that the 2 years paid leave is a reminiscence of the communism? Did I get that right?
How I see it, because it's only in these Eastern countries. I know that...
I don't think that's the case. And maybe Professor Neagoe or Professor Bican, if she knows, can correct us. But I don't think that's
Moldova,
the case.
In other Soviet countries, you had 3 years of maternity leave for a child, and that's still the case.
Okay. I remember my mom was saying that back in the 88, she was like, I had to do all kind of tricks to be able to stay longer than 3 months with you at home. So I don't know. To me, this is very corroborated with what Alina was saying. We lack nursery schools. And basically, that's why we let mothers stay at home, so that it's somehow a way to wrap this lack. Professor
Yes,
Bican,
I wanted to say that in the early years, communism was generous with its citizens. So the maternity leaves were longer in the 60s, in the 70s. Romanian communism in the 80s was horrible and restraining for such so many points of view, maternity leaves included, that somehow after the end of communism, the first policies which were put together had a compensating view. And that's how they got back to the long maternity leave for raising the child. Yes, we can attribute that to the old memories of early post-war years somehow.
Thank you so much for this note. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up. I would take all of you for a coffee, and I'll make sure to follow this up after or as soon as the Corona times are over. I want to
just 30 seconds on this,
yes,
on
please.
Government policies, because I think the most important bit for government is to be intentional about it. So I think the companies out there, they should publish stats and data on diversity, on kind of the pay gap between women and men. And I know public companies, they need to do that, but I think as a government, we should probably impose that on all companies across sectors, because once you have the data, then you know how you can kind of react to that. Then in terms of government funds, right, when you have those funds, you need to ensure that those accessing the funds, the funds are equally distributed between kind of companies funded by men and women, and to support more women entrepreneurs just to tap into the business out there. And also allowing more flexible working hours and reduced norms for women, and imposing that from a legislative point of view, because I think it's important for women to really understand that their companies can support them with, I don't know, different types of schedules in different periods of their lives. Just sorry.
That's a great contribution. Thank you so much. With that, we will wrap up. So if we have any government officials hearing us, we can go further on. Just please get in touch with us. I think it's important that women's voice is heard, especially during these pandemic times when there was so much more maybe stress on them because of all the household, all the care that had to be done, and indeed policies such as flexible hours, government funds, all the data that don't really have or we don't really know would really help in making the workplace for women a bit better and also more supportive. I want to thank you all. It's been lovely. I have lots of other questions that have been left unaddressed, but that's only because the discussion went so naturally. Very good flow. Thank you all for joining, and thank you all for your questions. I'm sorry we didn't manage to maybe address them all as we wished, but please, yes, keep contributing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all, and have a great day.
Cluj Innovation Days 2020 is part of the Future Skills lifelong learning program. The project is co-financed from the European Social Fund through the Human Capital Operational Program 2014-2020.